Welcome to r/ProRevenge. This is a story of someone getting back at someone with ProRevenge after being wronged. The first story is, block my driveway? I'll go ahead and take your vehicles. Friday night here in the country can get a little crazy sometimes, so I don't mind when my neighbors cause a ruckus or loud party, as long as it's not too crazy. Tonight I'm on call for Virginia State Police, towing rotation, which means I've got 25 minutes to get wherever the wreck, DUI, impound, etc. is. As luck would have it, my neighbors are having a party, and guess what's blocking my driveway? That's right, about 25 to 30 cars. I live down a dirt road at the end of a cul-de-sac, and it's pretty narrow. One in, one out type of deal, and with this rain we've been having, parking in the grass, clay, or mud is really not the best idea. Even with a 4x4, it can still get tricky. I noticed a few cars coming in early this evening, and walked over to my neighbors and made it pretty clear I was on call, and as long as they didn't block the road or my driveway, all would be good. No problems here. Well, I get a call from my boss, asking if I can go warm up the rotator and the light-duty flatbed, tow trucks. It's about 12:30 a.m., so I get my boots on and other gear, because if I'm up, I might as well stay at the shop and clean a few things to stay busy and make the night move along. I get in my car, and as I'm backing out of the driveway, I notice I'm blocked in. I don't mean by one truck, but by nearly 15 different vehicles. I calmly walk over to my neighbors, about an eighth of a mile hike, and as I'm looking for them through the crowd of drunk teenagers, some idiot wants to know why I'm on his property. He's not the property owner. I've never seen this classy gentleman. Finally, I find my neighbor and ask her if she can move the cars. I've got to go to work. She says in a normal tone, doesn't yell over the music, into the house. Whoever's blocking the driveway next door, move your trucks. Then slams the door in my face. I knock again, and she answers with a drunken, "Oh God, this be again?" Internally, I'm thinking, all right then. I do my best to explain. I'm on call and need to get out of my driveway to go to work. She comes back sloshing a natural light, exclaiming it's a party, relax. Shuts the door in my face and yells, "F that DC." I smile, and as I'm walking away, Macho Man throws a beer at me and cackles. "Yeah, you best leave. Go on, get." I get on the phone with dispatch and call for as many trucks as we have available tonight, about 10, and tell them to come on over. Mama's got some PPIs, private property impounds. I call police dispatch and ask if they'd send out an officer in case things get out of hand, and as soon as he gets to my place, my rigs start rolling up and hooking vehicles up and taking them to the impound yard. We get down to the last three vehicles, a yellow Civic, gold Silverado, and an old F-150. The Civic owner bolts to his car and takes off. The Silverado girl, pretty wasted, gets stuck and starts staring up my property. Officer walks over, and she throws a fit. Long story short, she gets arrested for underage drinking and DUI. The Ford owner doesn't show up. I get to work after all the impounds, and with me I brought coffees and snacks for my drivers. Tomorrow's not a business day, which means if these tools want their cars back, it's going to be a regular $289, plus 2 days of storage at $55 a day, and a $100 gate fee. I make note in every single storage sheet, papers that the vehicle owners get, to thank the girl who had the party for getting towed. Several of the kids' parents called wanting to know where their cars or trucks were. I gave them the yard address and told them they can come anytime. As soon as they started shouting about illegal tows and threatened with lawyers, I showed them pictures of their cars with no parking signs and explained that I tried to reason with the owner of the property, me, but she was tired of being blocked in by drunken teenagers. There are signs on my road saying no parking and not to block the driveway. Don't peeve off a tow truck driver. She'll legally take your vehicles. The second story is, build a driveway across someone else's property without permission, pay the price. Not sure if this is pro enough, but here goes. I was visiting my friend at his dad's house in an area where the land is so steep, all the driveways have to switch back up from the main road to the houses. A straight driveway is not an option because it would be steeper than the building code allows. A few doors down the road, there lived a nice old couple who until recently had had a vacant lot next door to them, but the lot had sold and the new owner had started construction on a new house. Unfortunately, the lot was so steep that the new owner built his driveway partly on the old couple's land. It was carved out of the hillside with an excavator. This probably wouldn't have been a big deal if the new owner had approached the old couple first and asked nicely, but did he? Would I be telling this story if he did? In fact, the old couple had no idea what was happening until they came home one day to see a huge scar in the hillside, snaking up from the road in from their house, across the corner of their property, and winding upwards to where an excavator was working to prepare the land for their new neighbor's house. They were pretty upset, but being nice, reasonable people, they figured it was an honest mistake, so they went over to talk to the machine operator. He didn't know anything useful, but he was happy to give them the phone number of the new property owner. The old guy gave him a call and politely explained the situation, but his new neighbor, whom he'd never even met, was having none of it. He flat out denied that the driveway crossed the property line, and he was rude enough that the old guy was pretty upset. At this point, the old couple weren't sure what to do. They double-checked the property pins to make sure they were right, and of course they were. But after further conversations with the new owner, it was clear he was an unreasonable guy who wasn't going to come to the negotiating table willingly. The old couple didn't want to take legal action because that would have been expensive, and frankly, the damage to their yard was already done. At the same time, they couldn't just let someone walk all over them like that, especially if they were going to be living next door for the foreseeable future. So the situation stewed for a while as construction continued on the new house, until one day when my friend's dad saw the old couple in the neighborhood and they started chatting. Of course, they told him the story about the a-hole new neighbor. Now, my friend's dad really liked the old couple, who don't have a mean bone in their bodies, so he was pretty peeved about the situation, and when he went home, he couldn't get it out of his head. That evening, after a few beers, he had a brilliant idea. He called up the old couple, explained his plan, and asked for their permission to carry it out. They chuckled and gave him the go-ahead, so he hopped into the rusty old full-size pickup he kept as a second vehicle and drove it over to the old couple's place, where he parked it across the encroaching driveway, making sure it was entirely on their property. The next morning, the work crew arrived bright and early to find that they couldn't drive to the house they were building because some jackass had parked an SH old F-150 across the driveway. They saw the note in the window with my friend's dad's phone number on it, so they called him to ask WTF. He explained that he had permission from the owners to park there and that no, he would not move his truck so they could get to work. Furthermore, if anyone attempted to tow the truck, they would be charged with trespassing and theft. There was no way the construction guys were going to haul all their tools up the hill by hand, and they didn't want to get in the middle of a legal battle. So they just called the new owner to let him know they'd be taking the day off and that they'd continue to take days off until the property boundary dispute was resolved. The new owner called the old couple in a fury, but the old couple told them the same thing my friend's dad told the construction workers. Basically, the vehicle was parked on their own property, so if he had a problem with that, he could go F himself. To make an already long story shorter, the new neighbor ranted a while, but eventually he wanted his house to be built, so the nice old couple ended up with a significant sum of money in exchange for an easement, allowing the driveway to pass across the corner of their property, and my friend's dad got several thank you cases of beer, and the satisfaction that comes from putting an a-hole in his place. Edits. This occurred in a small town in Canada. For those who think I made it up, thanks for thinking I'm so clever, but judging by the number of similar stories in the comments, and people asking if this was in X town, I think this happens pretty often. Not too surprising considering the number of houses built each year in the world. Regarding the legal questions and comments, the reason the guy built the driveway where he did was because it was cheaper and easier than making it all on his land, not because there was no other option, so most of your points, if not all, are moot. I'm on mobile, so can't paint a picture. But imagine two lots next to each other on the uphill side of a road, with the property boundary perpendicular to the road. The older couple live on the left when you're looking uphill. The new driveway is for the property on the right, and it snakes up the hill in a roughly S shape. The bottom 50 feet or so of the driveway crosses the old couple's land to reach the road. I'm not sure if any trees were harmed in the making of this post. The driveway was done by the time I saw it, but the couple didn't make that an issue, so I suspect not. Yes, my friend's dad drove after drinking a few beers. Every hero has his flaws. And the last story is, hippity hoppity, you damaged my property. Bippity boppity, I'm calling the coppity. Bippity boppity boo, they're taking your kids too. This happened shortly after college. My mom is a retired and disabled woman who now owns her own house on a quiet residential cul-de-sac. She's lived there longer than anyone else. Her neighborhood had designated parking spaces at the end of the cul-de-sac, all with the addresses of each house painted in the parking space. My mom doesn't get out much, so I use her designated parking space. At the time, we lived in the same city, and I visited her weekly to bring groceries, fix broken things, cook for her, etc. My mom parked her car in the backyard of her house, since she went out so little. Mom kept busy by gardening or baking and buying cookies for the children on the street. Mom's neighbor Ivy never parked well. Whenever I stopped by, her car was always parked so close to my car that I had to park on the curb. I wouldn't have cared about Ivy's poor parking but for two things. One, she had 4 or 5 kids and had parties almost every weekend, leaving trash in Mom's yard. 2, I love my car, a 2016 metallic ice blue Dodge Challenger Hellcat, the first car I had ever purchased brand new. I washed that car once a week, detailed the interior, and had rules against eating, drinking, or even leaving trash in my car. It was my pride and joy. Mom had called the police throughout Ivy's residence because of the parties. Ivy's guests would fill up the cul-de-sac with their cars, obstructing traffic, and get into loud, drunk fights at and after midnight. I often found empty beer bottles, empty condom wrappers, cigarette butts, and empty crack baggies on the fence between the properties, mostly on Ivy's side of the fence. This is all important information. On Saturday, while having dinner at Mom's house, I heard a loud crash and my car alarm went off. I ran outside to see Ivy's older model Honda Accord back out of her parking space and speed down the street. Ivy's Accord had a dent from the front bumper to the door and the headlight had popped out. I approached my Challenger with trepidation and screamed in anguish at what I saw. My car, my beautiful 3-week-old car with less than 500 miles on it, had a dent stretching from the passenger's door to the front bumper, and the right front wheel was tilted at a 30-degree angle. I was livid and in anguish as I called the police, filed an online claim with my insurance, and arranged for a tow truck to take my damaged car to the dealership. The estimated cost of repairs came out to $3,400 US. Total cost of repairs was eventually $6,500 US. I had a low insurance deductible, $100 US, but my car was parked and Ivy owed for the damages. For 2 weeks, I knocked on Ivy's door or waited for her to come home. She stopped driving her damaged Accord and either rented or borrowed a Ford Fusion. When she was home, she didn't answer the door. When she wasn't, she stayed away until my rental car, a Dodge Charger, left my mom's parking space. I left a note on Ivy's door for her to call me, but only received harassing calls from restricted phone numbers or people blaring air horns in my ear when I answered. The Revenge. About 2 weeks after the accident, Ivy's children came to Mom's house for some cookies. I noticed that 2 of them had bruises around their eyes. If Ivy hadn't hit my car, I still would have done what I did, but maybe not as underhandedly. I had Mom take pictures with and of the children, but waited until the next party to strike. Ivy had a party that night or the night after. Mom called me to let me know, and I installed an app onto my phone that gave me a fake phone number. I called 911 and reported the party. There's a loud party at 1007 Mountain Drive, and I'm worried because the children are around all these drunk adults. Please hurry. Mom called to let me know the police had arrived. I drove to her house, stopping by the grocery store first, so that appeared to be the reason, and saw Ivy and her boyfriend Bane already sitting in the back of a squad car. From a news broadcast that night, I found out that Bane had warrants out for his arrest. Initially, the charges were disorderly conduct and disturbing the peace. However, Mom turned over the photos of the children, anonymously mailing them through the post office, with Ivy's address and name on the return address. Less than a week later, Ivy and Bane were charged with child abuse charges. I think Bane was charged with more severe charges, as well for abusing Ivy's daughter. Either way, the children ended up in foster care, and Ivy and Bane ended up in prison. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.